We have a good group, and probably about half the folks that registered are on. So we do have quite a lot to cover today, so I am going to get going. Let folks join as they can. My name is Erin Rose Feely. I'm a training and technical assistance specialist providing contractor support to the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention for all things performance measures, performance management, PMT, all that fun stuff. And I am joined today by some of my teammates, our other training and technical assistant specialist, Jill, as well as some of our data analysts who you may be hearing from later on in the session, especially as you've got questions coming up. And let's get started with just a few logistics. Chat feature primarily today. You should see a chat box in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. So what we want to do is make sure that you can find that, make sure that that to line is set to everyone, and you will put most of your information in there. We will kind of be able to take folks off mute later on in the session, and we can always have further discussions. So let us practice using the chat box. If y'all wouldn't mind finding that chat box, make sure it's set to everyone. And if you could answer this question, what is your favorite time of year? Springtime, will fall, kind of even right now. Okay, even split there. Summer and fall. I am definitely a fall and a winter person. I grew up in the Northeast. There's just, to me, nothing like the leaves changing in the Northeast. Looks good, looks good. Just again, please make sure that that to line is set to everyone. There is a little drop-down menu. Responding to the host or to the panel, so make sure we've got that going. Questions are going to everyone. So thank you, thank you. Announcements. Today's session is going to be partially recorded. We'll be kind of stopping the recording or kind of, trying to edit out maybe some of the more kind of like open question and answer sessions. We will be posting the recording online. It does take a couple of weeks to get everything edited and like posted. So we will be sending out kind of like a thank you note when that is available. Copies of the presentation slides in PDF will go out with when available as well. Kind of checking the chat box. Okay, everything looks good. Thank you. This session is really focused towards awards that are fiscal year 2020, 2021, and forward. If you have only, say, like an FY17 to 19 award currently, you're more than welcome to stay. Just please make note that most of what we're going to be talking about is specific to those FY20 and 21 awards. As well as there are going to be a couple pieces that are going to be specific to if you have the grant award administrator role in Just Grants. So some of the things, if you log into Just Grants, you can't see some of the things I'm talking about. It may just be your roles or permissions. So we'll have you work with your the administrator or the Just Grants help desk to change that if that's what's needed. Welcome is going to officially be the performance measure reporting updates for fiscal year 2020 and 2021 measuring grantees. The objectives of our time here today are to kind of start out with a bit of a summary, which might be a place for some of you to kind of revisit how and why OJJDP has the performance measures that we have for fiscal year 20 and forward. I'm going to cover what the current reporting process is And again, this is not going to go specifically into how to define the measures. This is really going to cover the main pieces of what goes into a performance report and kind of tips on how to complete that report. We will be leaving a decent amount of time for questions and answers, so hopefully you come forward with that. We will also kind of take a break after the first section to kind of do some initial questions, and then we'll leave time at the end for some more. Your team will be receiving, again, copies of the slides today. If you need additional copies, please do reach out to the PMT help desk, and we will be happy to send any additional copies. So I will post the help desk contact information, which you will receive in the thank you letter, but make sure it's in the chat right now as well. Let's stop for a second and just take a moment to say this reporting process that the grant award administrators received some information on from our help desk a short while ago. So a big part of what came out, what we're going to be talking about today is not just grants, but an Excel document as well. And that Excel document is going to be able to cover both primary grantee, but mostly it's going to be subgrantee reporting. So for those of you with who have a mentoring award for the first time in fiscal year 2021, I'll give you a little bit of a background. For those of you who may have had an FY20 award, this may be hopefully a little bit of a refresher. I acknowledge what we're going to talk about today is many of you that we've heard from through the help desk have had prior FY17 to 19 awards. So this is a big change, and it's new measures and a new system. This has been a change over the course of time for all of us as well. So, we look forward to better understanding your perspective about how these performance measures are rolling out. A quick summary and update here might be an update for some of you who haven't seen this before. We have covered this in some past webinars. But so if you had, again, an older award, a lot of this may feel very different from what you did in what we call the legacy or the PMT system. The system is still accurate, it's still functional. It's being currently called a legacy system. So to summarize where we are right now is OJJDP and our performance management team process is kind of outlined there on the bottom of the slide. And, as we're getting to that blue bar there, the approved performance measures that were launched last year, we want your feedback. We want to know what's working, what's a challenge to collect data on. So please lend your voice to the particular part of the process. It was to kind of track and collaboratively work to produce some consistent and shared performance measures across many different OJJDP programs and really focus on outcomes rather than activities or outputs. These new measures really are going to help OJJDP inform decision-making, and they're also going to help tell your program story. We have reached a little bit of a crossroads, I will acknowledge, between where we are with that full list of performance measures and some of the functionality that we have in JustGrants, and we do look forward to the day when the performance measures are able to be in JustGrants for both grantees and subgrantees. So as you collect and track and monitor your data, we do also want to know that when we pull that in for data analysis, that all of it is going to be pulled together with multiple other grantees, because this is kind of how OJJDP is looking at programmatically overall. And these are fairly important for a couple of reasons. So is what we have listed here on the slide right now. Multiple pieces of federal legislation that really direct many different federal agencies to collect performance data. And it's a shift really kind of, just generally in thinking from just kind of checking the box and looking at basic, compliance with a regulation to really wanting to understand overall grantee performance. And those outcomes that you're reporting on, your work every day directly relates to this kind of evidence-based policymaking. I wanted to really highlight these items just to say the performance measures do come from somewhere, and they are here to stay. We want to find ways to kind of work smarter, not harder. Let's work together to help the data work for OJJDP, but for you as well. I mentioned this a little bit in the past, but just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge the mission of OJJDP, because this is really what your work performance measures are going to support. And this is, I know, whenever I start a new project, I start here to see how is this the goal of my project going to be supporting this mission. We're talking about today and supporting mission success, the performance measures or performance measurement. So the definition that I have here is one that does come from the Office of Justice Programs, or OJP, which in part defines performance measurement as the regular collection of data to assess whether the correct processes are being performed and desired results are being achieved. Kind of in two ways, which many of you may be very familiar with, which is going to be the qualitative data, that's that written, those narrative questions, as well as the quantitative data, it's kind of the numbers piece of it. Performance measure data is really also an excellent way for you to really get a sense of how your grant is progressing in meeting the goals and objectives as they're outlined in your application. So again, OJJDP is going to use all these performance measures rolled up or kind of aggregated a lot of different grantees when we are answering data calls or questions from Congress or the public, or particularly when there are requests for the president's budget. Knowledge of your program aligned with these performance measures is really what helps create that reliability and in the data pulled together. Before we get into the actual reporting process, I just wanted to take a moment to stop and say thank you. We want to acknowledge that, it can feel that you're just going from report to report sometimes when it comes to the measures, but we know that each of those measures represent the work that you're doing every day and that your subgrantees are doing every day in communities all across this country. I want to acknowledge, too, all of the hard work and feedback that many of you provided so far. We know there's been a lot of time and money spent on data collection. And I've really seen a lot of very thorough and thoughtful questions coming through. So please keep them coming, because we want to keep track of everyone. We want those questions are your voice in how these performance measures are going to continue to be rolled out in the future. One thing I do want to ask for is a little bit of grace. As I mentioned, it's a change for you. It's a change for us as well, and particularly with the Excel document that we're using around. So we fully appreciate and encourage your continued open and honest communication about that. Let's jump in and start talking about the report. So while we're waiting for Just Grants to kind of launch the subgrantee data collection functionality, to use an Excel sheet to kind of combine a group of key performance measures to be able to capture data, because we just went through, the data is important. And we want to be able to capture that in the meantime while we're waiting for the functionality to be completely ready to go. Again, this Excel is going to be temporary, and when there is full functionality in Just Grants, we plan additional outreach. We're going to plan other trainings and office hours to be able to go over what the functionality looks like as we then move into replacing the Excel sheet with reporting into Just Grants directly. So as we talked about, OJJDP went through a year-long process to create the measures that FY20 and 21 grantees have currently. In this section, we're going to go over the main parts of what make up your performance report as of July 2022. We'll stop at the end of this section and take some questions, then talk a bit more in detail about the Excel sheet. I'm going to kind of break things down here a little bit into kind of just a 1, 2, 3 step. Because if you've logged into Just Grants, or if you log in July, you, a grant award administrator, when you click on that PR number, it's going to look a little different. So apologies for the small screenshots. I kind of wanted to pull a few that we had just to kind of give you a visual reference of some of the things that I'm talking about here. So part 1, I'm going to go into a performance report of questions. Are going to be labeled as a question set called P and Q inside the PR in Just Grants. This should be very familiar to many of you. These are the same narrative or progress report that you've probably out in the past, so that shouldn't be anything new there. Part 2 is going to be a new question set that you're going to see for the first time now. And that is going to be something that is going to have some mixture of quantitative and qualitative data. So a few places where you're going to type in some text. Most of it is going to be numbers into the Just Grant system. The third piece of it is going to be that Excel document that was emailed out to grant award administrators. And we'll also go over a little for this presentation about how you can find additional copies of that, because we do have a copy that you can pull out of Just Grants, so you don't always have to go searching back for your emails. And that Excel sheet is going to be that number 3 down the bottom of that little screenshot. You're going to upload into the attachment section a completed copy. I do also want to note that attachments, the little paperclip icon, that will take multiple attachments. So if you have other supporting documents to go with the performance report, you're more than welcome to include them there. You can have multiple pieces in that attachment section. Piece number 1, narrative report. P&Q, and again, this may be something that many of you are familiar with. This is one, if you're not familiar with it, again, it's going to be mostly narrative questions. This is something that you could probably look at the copy of the questions, and you could put them into a Word document and paste them in. A lot of people do this. I would just note, make sure that you type everything out in kind of a plain text so that you don't end up with any error messages in grants. As I mentioned, while you should have seen the progress report, I will post in the chat a place where you can find a PDF list of questions just to see them ahead of time. And final answers do need to be typed directly into Just Grants. This is the new piece, number 2. This would be a question set that is going to show up in Just Grants as OJJDP _ youth measuring. That's what the line will say. When you click on it to open it, to get a series of questions that relate to the award and program profile questions in the mission and questions document. That's that kind of colorful PDF. We covered it in a previous webinar, and I will give you a link in the chat. So that is posted online in case you need that as well. The majority of the information that you are going to be pulling to answer these questions will mostly be coming from your proposal. These are questions that are specific to the grantee. You will notice a little asterisk next to most of these questions. That means that the question is required and will require some sort of answer. So again, if you get some red text popping up, that probably is going to mean that it's a required question. And as I mentioned, most of these questions do require what we call an integer or a number. Some may be a choice, and there's going to be a couple to watch for those text boxes where you can type in some answers. Is the definition and questions document that I was referring to. Again, it's just a small screenshot of a visual, just so that you know which document I'm talking about. And this is the one where you can find some additional guidance related to how you're going to answer each of those award and program profile questions. We have gotten many, many good questions so far. So we've got some additional guidance if any of you are going to need it. Again, please feel free to reach out to the help desk if you want to talk about your program specifically in relation to these questions. We'll be happy to set up kind of one-on-one or team-based calls to be able to talk through it specifically for your program. So we don't have a lot of real estate on these slides, so I wanted to just provide kind of a summary. This is not the exact wording of the questions, but I just wanted to provide a summary of what those award and program profile questions will entail. There's quite a few different pieces there. The majority of this, again, you should be able to find within your proposal. About program and profile questions, I wanted to call out a few of them. So the next couple slides, I'm not going to go over every single one entirely, but I pulled out a few that have become sort of like frequently asked questions through the help desk. If some grantees have a question, then hopefully more of you will as well. And then I do also want to point out a couple of them for a few tips in terms of reporting. So the first one that I do want to call it, you may be seeing that screenshot there in the middle, question number 3. DHS grants is currently functioning to enter a whole number. So this is going to be a dollar amount. So for example, you can see the little picture there on the left. If you put in a dollar sign, it's going to give you that red error message just saying it's not an integer, aka number value. Just take out the dollar sign if, you know, for example, your estimated total of all service contracts is $100, just type number 100. Whole numbers in the picture on the right, and that we can't do kind of dollars and cents. So we will, so again, this is not an official financial system of record in any way, shape, or form. This is going to be an estimate, so we'll let you choose what you're comfortable with if you need to round up or round down there. And I do also want to point out question number 4. That come in a lot too around partnerships. Partnerships are a collaborative effort between 2 or more agencies, organizations, programs, and again, because this is part of the award program profile questions, this is specific to the primary grantee, but it can also include your subgrantees as well there. Question 11, this one I wanted to call out, and I know the numbers aren't quite going in order here, but again, it's kind of sort of the way things needed to flow in terms of space on the slides. I wanted to call this one out because questions 11 and 13 are going to be a choice. One of your choices is going to be an other. So I want to call this out because if you choose other, you will be given a box will pop up because it will require an explanation. So again, if you choose other, that's a choice, but then you're going to need to provide some text in that other box. This is again a summary of the next couple of set of questions here. Again, there's a lot on the slide. You will be getting copies of the slide that will be available. And again, a lot of this will be coming out of your proposal. And so therefore, for many of you, if you have a mentoring award, that will probably include your subgrantees as well. So for example, minimum number of hours is a minimum number of hours per month and per week a match is expected to meet. Going to again be based on how you're calculating that one. So I know it's a really, really small screenshot. This is not something you're expected to read, but this is the third piece and what we're going to talk about more specifically in the next section, which is just a little bit of the Excel. And that's the third piece that creates the performance report. That's what you're going to fill out. And how you choose to get the information that goes on the Excel sheet from your subgrantees is up to you as the primary grantee. OJJDP has no system. If you have a data collection system, if you want to pass around the Excel, that is completely up to you. We just need that final copy uploaded there to the attachments paper clip. Was a lot of information. So let's stop for a moment and take a few questions. If we are running a little long, so I do kind of want to get through this next section. I promise there will be some additional question and answer time at the end again. So in this section, as I've been saying, even though there are quite a few performance measures, we chose a few for this Excel workaround program because we understand that, it doesn't feel like enough. But it was also a bit of a tough call to be able to balance what could be a very burdensome report via Excel with so many cells and columns to choose from, and with kind of a few of the key performance measures that are important for those, the data analysis and for those data calls and things of that nature. I can say that these performance measures that were chosen to go on the Excel sheet were done so with a lot of discussion and thought put into them. And we do acknowledge that you were given a much larger list of performance measures to continue to gather and keep records on as they apply to your projects. So as we've heard so far, please reach out if you have questions about specific measures. We'll do our best to answer them today. If not, then we will reach out to you personally. So here, again, this is just a summary of, and not the exact questions that are going to show up on the performance measure Excel sheet. I give you an idea of what will be asked for, as again, most of these will be numbers, except for that evidence-based program practice question. That will be a yes or no. Couple of things I do want to call out on this slide in particular is the UEI number. That one is optional. If you have it, that's great. If not, don't worry about it. Also, the sub-award ID. That is something that you as the primary grantee, if you're issuing those for sub-awards, you can include those, but that's a sub-award ID is not something that's going to come from OJJDP. Okay, so I think as I mentioned previously, there is a place within Just Grants that's going to be kind of towards the end of the program and profile questions. It's going to look like a page 4 here where it says subgrantee questions. It's not actually the questions. What this is a place to find and download a copy of the Excel that you need to fill out so you don't have to go scrambling to look through emails, because this workaround may be in place for multiple reporting periods. We wanted to make sure that there is a place to download a copy. It's a little, you see it, I know it's a bit small, I do apologize. Again, just to give you sort of a bit of a visual, question mark there underneath the text. And if you, when you go into Just Grants, if you click on that question mark, that's when the download process will start. To get a copy of the Excel sheet, and it's the same copy that our PMT Help Desk did email out to all grant award administrators. But again, if you have trouble downloading or you can't find the copy in email, please do reach out to the Help Desk. We will be happy to send you an additional copy. Okay, so a few notes about the Excel sheet. It's primarily going to be for your subgrantees. But if you, as the prime or the primary grantee, are also providing direct service to mentors and mentees, and use the Excel sheet as well. You can just kind of put things on a separate line and maybe use that. I think it's column B. Enter your agency name. You can also use that brief description box to kind of indicate that you're the primary grantee, as well as filling in your federal award number. So that'll kind of help our data analysts be able to distinguish between any service work that's being done by you as the prime versus any subgrantee. Okay, so as you're going through, if you click on a particular cell, you are going to notice that there will be some additional instructions, specifically the federal award numbers, because there's very different formatting when it comes to FY20 versus FY21. So that's why they're in 2 different columns. There's no expectation that you're going to have both an FY20 and an FY21 award, but because of the different formats, we had to do 2 different columns. Another quick tip is if something comes out wrong, you'll get a little error message. Don't worry about it. So in this example, I typed in just the straight award number and I didn't add the dashes, so it gave me an error message. Okay, so a couple other things to watch for as you're going through and entering your data is in each of those columns, and again, you're not supposed to be able to totally read the little screenshot there, excuse me, it's just meant kind of as a little visual, just as a key reminder that there's going to be a switch over in some of these performance measures, specifically new to the program versus carried over, those who are returning, who are maybe briefly part of the program as during a previous activity period. So those change. So it may look like you're double reporting on ages 0 to 17, but really one column is for those who were new during the activity period, and another column is going to be for those who were carried over and continuing with the program from the previous activity. So as before, highlight a few questions here. Again, it's not all of them, but these were some commonly asked questions that have been coming in through the help desk. So I wanted to kind of highlight these here in terms of 19A, B, and C, and kind of the difference there in terms of the accepted and trained versus those who may be exiting. Again, this is some general guidance that we have sent out and we can continue to send out. If some of this maybe feels like you're not quite sure how it's fitting, this would be a chance to kind of set up a one-on-one call so we can talk specifically about what's going on with your program. Right now, I've only seen one question. You are welcome to take yourself off mute and ask a question, use the chat box. Either way, that's sort of the summary of our presentation for today. If you have other questions, we would also love to hear some feedback from you about how we can make these sessions better. Anything that jumped out at you that you're going to use hopefully in your next semi-annual report, we'd love to know that. But again, any changes, any future sessions that you think would be helpful, please let us know.